Hello and welcome to Orgone Continuum TV number 9. Hopefully the picture should be a bit better because, not because I'm in a shed, but because I'm using the laptop rather than my phone. So it should be a bit better quality that way. Yeah, so where to start? Well, we're each month, I'm a bit late this month, apologies, but I've had a few things going on with all sorts of problems to do with the smart meter. My neighbour's put a smart meter in right next to my lounge wall, and it's been giving me various electrosensitivity symptoms like humming and sort of strange sensations on my scalp and 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 things like that. So that's why I'm a little bit late this month with this month's video. So I'm just going to go through a paper called, if you go to Orgone, P-S-Y-C-H Orgone.com, and if you look under Orgone Biophysics, there's a paper called Preliminary Experiments with Electrical Capacitance, blah, 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 and other observations associated with controlled Oranur in a strong Orgone device. And the paper is the first major paper on Oranur since contact with space, really. Well, experimental paper, and I'm away from home today, so I'm near my clinic, which is the Oranur box is actually stored right here. So you're actually, if I just show you, there's the Oranur box, and this is its home in the outhouse. I'm hoping to get it a nicer home soon, but anyway, that's it for now. So you can't actually live stream on a mobile anymore unless you've got a lot of followers. So it's better on here anyway. So I've got my paper on my phone and the different papers and journal articles I've written. You can go to my website, which is orgonecontinuum.com, I think it is, or is it .org? I forget. I'll just look up it now. Yeah, it is .org. So Orgone Continuum, all one word, .org. I'll put the links in the at the bottom. So this month I'm on to the first of my Oranur experimental papers. So this was published in April 2018 by the JPOT Journal for Psychiatric Orgone Therapy, which is located at psychorgone.com. PS, and it's the cutting edge journal for orgonomy at the moment. There are some journals publishing things in psychiatric aspects of orgonomy and social aspects, but as far as covering the whole of the orgonomy from biophysics to sort of social stuff, it's really the only cutting edge journal. So Reich undertook an Oranur experiment in 1951, where Oranur means orgone against nuclear, and he was hoping to control nuclear radioactivity with orgone energy, but it didn't quite work out that way. He ended up discovering cloud busting and discovering a new type of energy, which he termed Oranur. But that was only after a lot of trauma, really. And that was because he didn't know how strongly orgone would react to nuclear stimulation to create this energized orgone, which we can term Oranur now. So I'll read you the synopsis. So Wright did the original experiment in 1951, and apart from some Spanish physicists confirmed that there is an Oranur anomaly in a kind of semi-orgone box, but apart from that, sort of, there hasn't been a proper re-examination of the entire Oranur experiment until the British experiment in 2017, which is my own. So the synopsis: a strong orgone device was activated with a controlled dosage of a very small amount of radioactive material. Electrical capacitance and other effects were examined. Possible anomalous occurrences are noted in terms of a small increase in electrical tension in chemical batteries and electronic capacitors placed within the device. Other possible anomalous reports are noted, such as small changes in radioactivity, temperature, magnetism, luminescence, and subjective observations associated with the device. So at first I talk about why I want to look into Oranur, and it was because my central interest is orgone and consciousness. So I felt to investigate orgone and consciousness, I'd have to get very strong concentrations of orgone, and so Oranur was obviously the way to go for that. The experimental device, an approximately 6 foot by 3 foot human-sized ORAC cabinet, which you've seen, placed horizontally. At first, the door was removed and placed underneath the cabinet to give extra layering. Putting the cabinet back upright was tried, but this decreased the charge by approximately 20%, according to a Helionosis Life Energy Meter device. Also made placing of the internal items difficult. The cabinet was put back on its side, and eventually the door was put back on. My mother said it looked like a coffin when I first, before it was moved to the outhouse. Inside the cabinet, there was placed one and then two large 2 foot square orgone accumulating boxes with one side removed. Originally developed orgone acupuncture, a suitcase of accumulating materials, and other orgone devices. Approximately 12 orgone devices in all. The inner boxes were made of steel, rock wool, and Celotex type panels on a wood frame, standard materials for an ORAC. The orgone suitcase was filled with rock wool and steel wool. And then there was 2 orgone acupuncture tubes based on Bern-Senf's design. That's BERND, Senf, SENF, a German professor. So a very strong set of orgone devices, so a very, very strong orgone field. Perhaps not quite as strong as the orgone field Reich used in 1951, which he had an orgone room, but not far off. Sort of the amount of concentration of the devices in a small space. The experiments carried out involved electrical, thermal, orgone field, radioactive, magnetic, and luminescence measurements. So, and then I go through each type of measurement. So what I actually did was I took the large box and then gradually introduced. Just see, I seem to have gone on to into the effects. I have to go back and find out where I describe the maybe I think I described the radioactive stimulation of the box later in the paper. So I'll just go to yeah. So this very strong Orgone setup was gradually exposed to a very small amount of americium-241. The americium was present inside a sealed smoke alarm. In terms of activity, it was 0.9 microcuries of americium. This corresponds to an amount of 0.26 micrograms of americium, MCG, not MG. At first, it was placed 12 foot away from the Orgone device. After a week, it was moved to 6 foot, then 3 foot. A week later, then 1 foot, then within the device for a day, and lastly, just outside the device again. So it was exposed to radioactive substances very gradually over a period of 5 weeks. Reich used 1 milligram of radium-226 in the original Oranur experiments, and this corresponds to 1,111 times the radioactivity used in this experiment. So the first experiment was in Maine, USA in 1951, just after, I think he got the materials 1950 and started 1951, or was it 1951 November? I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it was 1951 November time, actually. But I have to check on that. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I have to ask Roberto. He's good on these things, or look it up. Yeah. Yeah, and then I talk about how I measure it in the background readings and the microsievert per hour readings of the background. So and the various Geiger counter measurements. So I'll go back to the beginning now. 6 different types of measurements were taken: electrical, thermal, the Orgone meter, radioactive measurements from a Geiger counter, magnetic measurements, and luminescence effects. And the Oranur cabinet had a, because now the Orgone cabinet's been converted into an Oranur cabinet, and it had profound effects in all of those areas. In terms of electrical effects, I had noted that a battery that I placed inside the box seemed to recharge itself, but it was quite hard to repeat this effect. So eventually I did find that I could repeat the effect, but on a smaller scale. I must have just, there must have been some fluke in the way the charges were going up and how it related to the battery. An increase in electrical charge, which electronic capacitors pick up more easily than a chemical battery. You can occasionally pick it up with a chemical battery, and I did find that if I took part charge batteries, so batteries that already had some electrical charge in them, and placed them in the Oranur box, that I got a greater increase in chemical part charge batteries than in chemical part charge batteries that weren't exposed to Oranur. But I again repeated the complete charging of a chemical battery like I did the first time. I think that was a fluke of the temperature, and I think it was when the Oranur box was peaking, when it was first exposed to the radioactive substances. And by the way, people tend to panic when they hear the word radioactivity. I mean, radioactivity is all around us and is often good, because small amounts of radioactivity can stimulate your orgone field, and even at its most, even at the peak, the doing a controlled Oranur experiment, even when the radioactivity levels peaked, they were still within sort of the kind of boundaries that you might get if you went out walking on a hilltop covered in rock, or in a certain geological areas. They were never sort of at levels that might be problematic. So a capacitor is a little electronic device that goes on an electronic circuit that stores electricity for a little while and stops the circuit overloading. And it's basically a tiny little, very weak orgone accumulator, plastic and metal layers. So I took boxes of capacitors and exposed them to Oranur versus control boxes, and did it under quite stringent conditions, matching temperature and other effects. There's sort of 3 or 4 pages alone just on electronic capacitors. But the electronic capacitors showed a definite increase in charge when they're exposed to Oranur versus not. Temperature measurements, those also showed a definite change. Mike used to call TO to T, which means temperature orgone versus temperature. And TO to T, the problem with is the orgone cabinet, the Oranur cabinet rather, it doesn't contain the temperature change very well. The actual temperature effects extend about 6 foot minimum from the cabinet. So I had to do the temperature measurements in an identical room alongside the Orgone box, the Oranur box, but they consistently showed one to, I can't remember offhand what was the peak, but it was at least one. Let's have a look. The temperature within Orgone devices has been noted to be higher than the ambient surroundings in a number of controlled experiments since Wright's discovery of the effect. Term TO to T for temperature orgone versus temperature. Rigorously controlled TO to T experiments being conducted by DeMeo and others. TO to T suggests that there is an anomalous energy accumulated in the ORAX. Something I've learned since is that there's a whole hundreds, if not thousands, of papers on torsion field effects, which is the Russian name for orgone energy or orgone energy waves. And there's also Russian torsion temperature studies, which are in effect TO to T studies. The temperature in the inner box of the Orgone device, the immediate surroundings of the device, and a control room were compared. I've already said that. The standard electronic thermometer accurate to 1/10 of a degree centigrade. There was an almost constant differential between 0.1 and 0.8 degrees centigrade, averaging around 0.3 to 0.4 of a degree Celsius. So basically, within 6 foot of the Oranur device, it's about half a degree warmer than not. Then I also measured orgone field measurements with a Helionosis experimental life energy meter. They're manufactured in Canada, and they're based on Reich's design but miniaturized, and it works on the interaction between an electrical circuit and orgone fields, and it can pick up when something's highly orgone charged. So there was there's kind of rings around the Oranur cabinet of increased orgone charge. To give an idea of the readings, a person's hand on the same settings on the meter and at the same distance varied from around 40 to 60%. And the readings were taken when the radioactive material was at different places. Actually, I think I'll just read this out because it's quite complicated. There was different effects at different distances, and there was different effects when the radioactive source was at different placements from the device. Most of the readings were as expected. Room 1 was about half of room 2. So room 1 measurement, I think, was right next to the device. Reading was taken at the entrance to the orgone device room, room 1. A second reading 3 foot from the orgone device was taken, room 2. A reading was also taken at the outside wall of the orgone device, and another 2 readings were taken inside the device. And then those readings, and also an Oranur charged piece of orgonite was also. Most of the readings were as expected. Room 1 was usually about half of room 2, indicating a fairly large field getting stronger near the device. This was expected. The outside wall of the device, the inner and outer walls of the device all gradually increased in inner boxes of the device as the americium radioactive source was moved closer to the orgone box. The americium had 5 placements, 12 foot, 6 foot, 3 foot, 1 foot, and inside the device. That only kept the americium inside the device for 1 day because the charge was too strong. The outside of the device would read between 40 and 60% on the meter usually, which is about the same as a person's hand. Each day, the americium was taken from its placement at the allocated distance. Oh yeah, this is a bit complex. I don't know if I'll go into this on the video. I also took the radioactive source, the smoke alarm, and placed it away from the orgone device and measured the orgone produced by, or the orgone meter readings of the americium itself away from the device. And there was all sorts of interactions there. I think, but if you're interested in the temperature readings, I think you really will have to read it through yourself. I mean, I'll just read this. When the americium is at position 1, about 9 foot from the device, just outside the orgone room, the reading was between 10 and 24% generally. However, when the americium was measured 3 foot from the device, this dropped. Yeah, this is the complex thing, because the readings directly by the americium were dropped by the orgone field. So when it was closer to the center of the orgone field, the americium readings went down. So it's pretty complex. So the americium now had a quarter more orgone charge away from the device compared to close up. For example, 24% away from the device compared to 18% near the device was about average. The organotic field of the americium appeared to be suppressed near to the orgone device. Nearly every reading seemed to confirm this effect. So although the americium stimulates the orgone, the americium's own charge is also suppressed by the orgone, so it's complex. So the orgonite compound, the organotic compound, resin, metal, shavings, and crystal that was Oranur charged, and a similar crystal was orgone charged in the device and readings taken with the orgone meter. The orgone compound behaves similarly to the crystal, and both gained and lost a modest amount of charge at the same time. I've since shown that orgonite and crystals both, I think in this paper and the following paper, have shown that orgonite absorbs orgone and re-releases it, as well as absorbs Oranur and re-releases it. And an Oranur charged piece of orgonite has a consistently higher charge than an Oranur charged piece. But still, we're completely safe. There's no all the radioactive levels are completely within normal bounds. So Reich, going on to the radioactivity readings, Reich used 1 milligram of radium-226 in the original Oranur experiments, and as we've noticed, this corresponds to 1,000 times less the radioactivity that I used. The actual radioactivity readings from the americium on a Geiger counter are barely over the background count of 0.08 to 0.12 microsieverts, so you can hardly even mount. You might get a large amount of radioactivity just from a piece of rock off a mountain. So I talk about the Geiger counter I used, and then I talk about the doorbusters I used to clear any if the atmosphere was too heavy with orgone. There was a few anomalous radioactivity observations, like there was a sudden suppression of all Geiger counts for about 40 foot when a slightly larger amount of americium was brought suddenly close to the device, so all the radioactivity got suppressed. But that just lasted for 10 minutes. There was a second anomaly in that a psychic, who was also a psychotherapist and medium, she could excite the Oranur devices as though she was radioactive, but she wasn't. It was just her mind. So the mind interacts with orgone in a similar way to radioactivity, which is slightly bizarre. So I'd just like to say that I don't recommend that anyone experiment with Oranur unless you're fully knowledgeable about orgonomy and have done a lot of training and have a scientific background. And if you read my cautionary notes in my paper, that goes into detail about the precautions that any scientist or researcher watching this who wishes to repeat it should note. So that is a disclaimer here. Any only sort of only scientists and researchers should consider sort of long-term, sort of dedicated researchers who know their stuff, and scientists should even consider doing this work. I've studied Reich every day for more than a 20, what is it now? About 2 decades, and I've got the only Masters of Science in orgonomy. So I've been very careful and cautious. And people think life force is a bit of a joke, but it's not. It's the most powerful force in the universe. So I talked briefly about possible therapeutic effects of Oranur, and I go into that more in the next paper, so I won't talk about that now in much detail. There's magnetic effects. I think this has been noted as well with Trevor J. Constable's, the researchers looking into his work in Italy, the GRCU. They with their bioforms, because they notice a magnetic. I think maybe DeMeo has noted that there's magnetic deflections near cloudbusters. I'm not sure, or perhaps Reich has mentioned it. I'd have